And we are live. My name is Marco Stavro, also known as the Gen Z Guy, and this is the Gen Z 360 show. I've got the amazing privilege of sitting here with Devandré, an incredible HR leader and someone who's made a huge impact both locally and globally in different sectors. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Marco, and everyone tuning in. It's an absolute, privilege and honor to be in a space like this to, share my story and really share what happens in our space. So HR Uncovered.
So I got to ask the first question,
Yeah.
and this is not a part of our script. The reason I asked, "Are you working from home?" is because of that really cool shirt and casual shirt
Yeah.
that you're wearing, and he's actually sitting at the office. So tell us about your guys' culture and kind of processes in terms of what you're having to wear at work.
I think it's such a funny story. Coming into the workplace, you'd assume that it's suit and tie and shirt. And a lot of us don't really have that clothing in our cupboards unless for special occasions. But for me, it was always trying to show up, that's true to who I am. And so yeah, the attire is business casual, but I like to add a bit of spice to that.
Awesome. And give us a quick little introduction onto who you are, your career experience, where kind of the organizations you've worked at, and then where you're at now.
Thank you. Yeah, so like you've mentioned, I'm Devandré Lawrence. I've been in the profession, in the HR profession, for just over 10 years. I started off my career at Pickn Pay on the graduate program, which was in 2013. And I grew from there, joined Nandos. Following Nandos, I joined Young Brands, so KFC South Africa specifically. And after KFC, I joined Pernod Ricard, which is the second leading in wines and spirits globally. So very fortunate and privileged to have had over a decade of experience, and really excited to share that all with you today.
Amazing. You want to tell us about maybe one of your greatest leadership lessons taken from one of those organizations that you worked at, and maybe a practical example of a fun cultural thing that they had at Nando's or at Pickn Pay that really stuck with you?
Actually, one of the recent examples was with KFC, Young Brands, and they do the school monthly town hall. And what the town hall was everyone coming together across the organization, and a different department would host that town hall every month. And it was quite fascinating. The first one I went into, the decor, from the creatives to the decor, was just outstanding. So you walk in there, it's a feel good moment. The vibes are all over, and it doesn't feel like you're at work, place of work. So you walk in and you're highly energetic. And what was cool was there was different leaders giving updates about their space and what we're doing in the communities. And we celebrate and recognize, so celebrate birthdays, achievements, and they had a strong culture of recognition, which is close to my heart, and just recognizing the milestones that we've made both individually and as an organization. So it felt like a big jewel, a big party, but there was true business essence to that, and just bringing people together. I think we lost Marco.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, my headphones are not. I'm so sorry about that. This is why we need some South African leaders like me and
Yeah.
you to fix this place. But we're back, and we've
That,
prepared for
that's
the
the
moment.
most important part is that you're back.
Okay, and it looks like it continued the stream. So apologies, everyone watching. We just had a quick little load shedding reboot moment. If you want to just kind of carry on, pick up from where you left off, if you remember that point.
Yeah, sure. So I was speaking about the town hall at KFC and how they ignited the culture through collaboration, and that's very dear to my heart. I think coming to work and be in the volatile space that we operate in and things ever changing, that human connection is important and the element of fun is important. I think personally in our personal lives, we tend to do that often where we socialize with people that are closest to us. And at work, for me, the synergy should be the same, where yes, there are things to be done from an organizational perspective, but also we are humans first. And when we say that we are people first business, what does that really mean? And for me, it's the essence of connecting people and people feeling connected. Because once you feel like you're connected, you feel like you belong, and you really show up as your best self, your authentic best self, and that to me is highly important.
Now, we recently had Mark Holtzhausen on the show. He's the head of global people at MTN. And he was saying how their policy is family first. So if Ralph Maputa phones in him and his family phones, he can say to Ralph, sorry, I got to take this, the family emergency. And that's the culture that they want. They want their employees to put themselves and their families first, which is basically what you're saying, correct?
100%. 100%. I think if you feel that connection and um, part of you, you'll feel part of. That's what's important. It's when you don't feel included, when you don't feel that it's representative of who you are, it's difficult to connect. And I think a lot of what we do is through storytelling, and the birth of storytelling is the related, where you convey something and it's relatable to whoever you're conveying that to, and your audience as well. And I think the same applies in business and in the workplace, where you find those points of how people could connect and how people relate to each other.
And now, having worked in all these different large organizations, what are some of the things you think from an African landscape we're missing, either culturally or structurally? Like, how can a leader listening to this of a team, what are some of the things they need to be thinking about?
I think, and this is a bold ambition of mine, and it's quite personal. Um, I've always, being across different organizations, I think we all put in effort to elevate the people experience. I think more so now than ever before. Um, but I think the missing piece or the opportunity is, how do we do that collectively? I always believe that there's power in the collective. And opposed to fending for your organization and creating a unique experience for your organization, how do we come together as leaders and as people across organizations to really create that thread around what the experience could be? And I think, localizing it in terms of our heritage and what we stand for as South Africans, and outside of South Africa for, other countries as well, is what's unique to that country, and how do we build that into the experience across organizations.
Yeah.
My dream is that, all of us come together, whether it be within the HR space, in the business space, and we really talk about, not only talk about best practice when it comes to people experience or around global trends, but saying intentionally, what do we want to deliver as leading organizations or small organizations, and how do we affect that from bottom up?
Absolutely. And in terms of like conflict management, have you got any strategies or tips or things that maybe you've learned over the years or through university that have really helped you? Because I feel like that's such a especially in South Africa, because of our political instability and just people being,
Yeah.
so diverse, like dealing with conflict and expressing ourselves is so different to each culture. And now with COVID and online and building rapport, like what are your thoughts around that?
I think that's such an interesting question. And given my role, we deal with conflict resolution quite often. But again, if I take that lens off and I just broaden it up, I think a lot of the times conflict is caused by our perception of how things are received and our feelings and opinions that we have around either circumstance or a situation. For me, on the receiving end, or being the initiator thereof, is understanding the root cause. So why is there a conflict? Why does the conflict exist? Um, Understanding why the conflict exists allows you to take a moment to really
Yeah.
reflect, take a step back, reflect on what the situation is, opposed to responding. Again, something that I apply in my personal life is try not to have your first thought be responsive, but internalize what your thought is, and understand where it's coming from, what sparks that, and then listening to the conversation, not listening to respond, but listening really to be heard. And I'm not saying that we need to understand, but I'm saying we need to give the space to the next individual to raise their opinion and explain, this is why I feel the way I do, and this is what's triggered me or upset me, that's resulted in my response to you. And I think once you reach that, there's a level of empathy that is born. And again, taking it back to our previous conversation around human connection, is that we all have that behaviors instilled in us. So how do we go deep and really touch on those emotions so that it's evident in the conversation? And I think in that sense we become less defensive and
Yeah.
be open to the conversation for that to be resolved, whether there be resolution or not. I think the same in marriage and relationships, etc., is there might not be a right or wrong, but there's common grounds, and it's then saying, how do we reach a compromise, and what does that common ground look like, so that we walk away feeling like, number one, I've been heard, number two, we're having a productive conversation, and number three, there's a resolution that makes us both feel good, and it doesn't negatively impact the relationship. I think that's what's important as well, is that often we walk away from situations, we forget to internalize, and that has a ripple effect on the relationships that we're trying to build. One of the main reasons why I sit where I am today is because of relationships, and I think there's so much power in holding the right relationships, and really investing in those relationships. And it takes a big part of you, to do that initial investment.
100%. Great answer. Who's the best leader you've worked under, and what do you think made him so good? Like, what are maybe 2 or 3 characteristics that you think he had, such like self-awareness, or etc., that he had or she had?
Yeah, I was about to course correct you there. It was a she. And her name is Lucia McMullen. She really, at a point of when I just graduated back in 2012, I just graduated and I was looking for opportunities. Thought I was going to become a journalist. I enjoy writing as well, and done a 3-month stint at a magazine company. And at the time, Pickn Pay was opened up their first graduate program, and she interviewed me. And you can imagine, at the time I was probably 21, 22 years old, and I didn't show up the way I do today. There was a big evolution from then to now, and she saw the potential in me, and she gave me that opportunity to get on board, and I joined the graduate program. And I think I've been with her ever since. She's been a strong mentor and coach to me. And I think the big characteristics is her level of self-awareness and how she showed up as a leader. I think Often we try and reflect that. In the corporate world, we call it imposter syndrome, where we try to reflect certain behaviors because that's imminent within our world. And I think she was very deliberate and intentional about how she showed up, because she knew that that impacted us as her team, and she understood her role as the leader. And that was really good for me to aspire not to be like that, but to find my own space within that as well. I think secondly is that she allowed the space for failure and failing forward. I think as we come in and we try and be as perfect as we can and try and do everything right, tick all the boxes, but we're only human. And so we're bound to make mistakes. I think how mistakes are received is important. So creating a safe space, understanding that we can fail forward, and that what that means is, not making the same mistakes you did yesterday, making new mistakes and learning from the mistakes you've done before. So number two, that's really what she's done. And number three is, understanding the potential in the people that she led and being able to stretch them and taking daring risks. On the receiving end, you'd sit and think, how ever would I be able to achieve this? But once it's done, you look back and in hindsight, you're like, wow, I was fully capable and I've learned so much, and it's a proud moment. And it's important to stop in that proud moment and tap yourself on the shoulder and say, well done. It's that self-recognition that's important as well. So in summary, that's really the foundation of my own leadership attributes and what built my leadership capability. And, I've been fortunate to absorb a lot of those qualities and attributes from different leaders that led me over my career and then make it my own.
Thanks for sharing it. And I think I want to highlight what you said in the beginning, the opportunity she gave you to step up as a leader. There's a lot of competitive nature because of South Africa being third world country and there's a lot of scarcity. There are very few leaders that say, yes, the next generation, like they have to come on board. There has to be a succession plan, and I think that's such a unique characteristic of great leaders and great mentors. They encourage the next generation. They give them an opportunity. They give them the time. And I think that's something I've learned in my career and which has really helped me is just to ask, because there are people willing to help you and go over and beyond. I think we take one or two bad experiences, or I know like Gen Z feel scared of failure or rejection, but I think that's an amazing point that you just highlighted.
100%, Mark. I think just to build on what you said, because it's such a passion of mine as well, is that don't be afraid to step up, and we say, you have to be uncomfortable to grow. Success doesn't come from being in your comfort zone. And so all of us have gone through tribulations. All of us have gone through hardships. We might not see it because what we show is where we are. And we share the success stories. It's the journey that gets us to the point we are today that is important. You can't skip the steps. You have to go through each step. For me, I've realized there is no destination, the ultimate destination, because learning is continuous, growth is continuous. And so the hopes I have for myself and, hopefully for everyone watching is
the journey.
It's the journey, and really finding the value in the journey and the appreciation and gratitude for every step that you take, as difficult as it may be.
Absolutely. Yeah, well said. And I think that's also for Gen Z. If I just bring it back to, myself and the show and the work that I do in corporates, it's a big part because they're so competitive, because they're so performance orientated, because they're so goal orientated. We have to remind them and remind ourselves that you must enjoy the process, and the challenge and the growth is the ultimate winning. Like I always say to people, like this morning I met with a young girl and a parent, and she was saying how, I just wanted to make a lot of money. And I'm like, okay, here's 100,000 Rand. I'm going to give it to you right now. What are you going to give me? And she didn't have any skills, or she didn't have any value. And that brought up the point where I said, it's not about money. You can have 10 million rand in the bank or 100 million or a billion, but you'll still be an unhappy, unfulfilled person who's not learning and developing themselves. So it's not actually about the money. You have to become the person first and then endure and receive and experience the benefits of being a lead in an organization or having a lot of resources.
100%. I couldn't agree
So
with you.
let's just quickly chat about mental health. I know it's such a big topic at the moment, both in South Africa and in a global context, and just people struggling with their capacity and struggling to deal with their work-life balance. Just let me know if you heard my last question.
Yes, if you can just repeat the question, please.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool. The question was, so just chatting about mental health and work-life balance and capacity. What are your thoughts and observations around that? And then how are you wanting to kind of solve for that in your organization?
100%. I think it's such an important question, and I'll share with you what I do personally. Is that there are times when you are under lots of pressure and stress tends to increase at different points of the day. What I'm very intentional about is taking short breaks. So I plan out my diary the week or the Sunday before the week starts to really get a view of what meetings I have for that week, how busy I'm going to be, and then be quite intentional around setting some breaks between meetings where I can, and using that time for myself. So I take walks outside. Whether I'm sitting at my desk or whether I'm walking outside, I tend to always gaze out, either into the garden or if there's a tree nearby, and I always look at how the leaves wave from side to side as the wind blows through it, and it's such a calming thing. So I think we all have different unique ways in terms of how we center ourselves, but it's important that you do take the time. Something else I enjoy doing is finding hobbies outside of my work life. And for example, I'd go and exercise and really commit to myself. I think often we quick to commit to things we do for organizations and for business, and we sure we meet those deadlines because they are performance rated, and we take we don't put in as much effort for ourselves personally, where we make a commitment and we stick to that commitment. And something I've been very intentional about, especially this year, was saying, if I put something down for myself, I'm going to hold myself accountable to ensure that I do that, because my well-being is as important. And we forget that what we put in is what we're able to give out. And so if you are not filling your cup, how do you give to others? And so taking the time and also finding, a space amongst either your friends or your family where you can have these conversations. I think bottling everything up and keeping it in our heads is a large contributor to things deteriorating and matters, our health deteriorating over time. It's really being able to process that. Something else I keep close is having conversations with myself. And at first I thought it was hilarious. And even that was okay. Whether it was a joke or a laugh, I'd be laughing at myself or with myself or having a conversation with myself. I think it's important to release and find ways to release, because we need to process what we've experienced and what we're going through to take the next step. If we don't process, we continue to keep the baggage and keep the weight on our shoulders, and the weight becomes heavier and heavier and heavier. So you need to find your moments of release.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And specifically around Gen Z, having worked in some grads and engaged with young people, what is your advice to other leaders and executives listening to this that are really frustrated with their staff or can't retain young people, or even their children, perhaps? What are some of the insight that you can share on that?
I think for me, Gen Z, and if we think of generations, the importance of generations coming into the workplace is the evolution thereof. And if we look back at, the working world 10 years ago or 20 years ago, they were vastly different to what they are today. I think, looking at myself as a millennial and coming in was really the space to bring a part of me into the organization in one shape or form. We understand that there's governance and regulations that needs to be imposed to ensure that the business, is sustained and continues to grow at a pace. But I think finding opportunities where people can bring difference and bring challenge, whether that be in a sense of technology, whether that be in a sense of practices, but it's being open to conversations and understanding how we can absorb that in the best way for our people and the best way for the organization, and if it's fit for purpose. So I'm a big supporter of bringing generations in, and providing similar opportunities as what I was provided when I started out. And I think just being open to the possibility of change and really understanding what that change looks like.
Amazing. And then last question I always like to end off with is, if you had 30 seconds to live, what would your message be to the world?
I'd say don't hold back. I think for a lot of the times, and my own personal experience, I'd accommodate to try and fit in, and I'd lose pieces of myself. And I think that's what makes you, your difference is what makes you unique. So show up as your best self. Don't hold back in terms of who you are, and keep the confidence because you are worth it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining the show. Thank you to everyone who listened in on all the platforms. Definitely go and re-listen and get some notes on the points that Devandré mentioned, and reach out to me anytime at marco@marcostavro.com. Let's chat about Gen Z and your guys' organizational culture. And reach out